Picture this. You are standing in a cafe in Paris, or maybe it's a boardroom in Tokyo. You have spent 6 years studying the language. You got an A in high school French. You have a streak on your language app that's longer than some of your relationships. The waiter or the CEO looks at you and asks a simple question. And you freeze. Your mind goes blank. You start mentally conjugating a verb in the past imperfect tense while your face turns bright red. And eventually, you just mutter something in English and look at your shoes. If that sounds like a nightmare you've actually lived, you are not alone. In fact, statistics suggest that despite billions of dollars spent on language education globally, an estimated 95% of people who set out to learn a second language never reach fluency. 95%. Today, we are asking why. Why is the adult brain, which is capable of putting humans on the moon, so often defeated by a few irregular verbs? I'm Chloe, and joining me to dissect the harsh truths of why you still don't speak English, or Spanish, or Mandarin is Alex.
It's good to be here, Chloe. And honestly, that 95% statistic isn't just a number. It is a tragedy of wasted potential. But the harsh truth we're going to talk about today is that it's not because you're not smart enough. It's because almost everything you've been told about how to learn a language is scientifically wrong.
That is a big claim to start with. Scientifically wrong? Because I remember sitting in classrooms for years, filling out worksheets, memorizing vocabulary lists, and reciting dialogue. Are you saying that was all for nothing?
For the purpose of actually speaking? Mostly yes. Think about it. You treated language like it was history or math. You tried to memorize facts about the language. But language isn't a set of facts, it's a skill. There's a fundamental distinction in psychology between declarative memory, knowing that something is true, like the capital of France, and procedural memory, knowing how to do something, like riding a bike. School teaches language as declarative memory. They teach you rules. But fluency lives in procedural memory. You can't learn to ride a bike by memorizing the physics of gyroscopic force, and you can't learn to speak fluent English by memorizing the rules of the present perfect continuous tense.
Okay, that makes sense on a gut level. I can explain why a sentence is wrong in French, but I can't actually say the sentence correctly in real time. But if the school system is broken, what is actually happening in the brain when we fail? Is it just that we're overloaded?
That's exactly it. It's called cognitive load theory, which was developed by the educational psychologist John Sweller. The basic idea is that your working memory, the scratch pad of your brain, is extremely limited. It can only hold about 4 to 7 items at once. Now imagine you're trying to speak. If you are consciously thinking about grammar rules, okay, subject, verb, agreement, is this masculine or feminine, you are clogging up your working memory with what Sweller calls extraneous cognitive load. You have no brain power left to actually focus on the message you're trying to convey. You crash. The system overloads.
It's the juggling analogy. If I'm thinking about where my hands are, I drop the ball. But if that's the case, how do we ever learn? I mean, babies don't study grammar, but they don't overload their cognitive scratch pads either. They just absorb it.
Precisely. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable truth for adult learners. You are trying to speak way, way too soon. There is this obsession in the language learning community, and I blame certain apps for this, with speaking from day one. It's actually counterproductive.
Wait, really? I thought practice makes perfect. If I don't speak, how do I get better at speaking?
That's the paradox. Input precedes output. Always. You mentioned babies. A baby listens for 2 years before they start forming complex sentences. This is what the linguist Stephen Krashen calls the input hypothesis. He argues that we acquire language in only one way, by understanding messages. That's it. We don't acquire it by speaking, we acquire it by listening and reading. When you force yourself to speak before you've built up a massive mental representation of the language through listening, you aren't practicing language, you're just practicing anxiety. You're cementing bad habits and stressing your brain out.
Practicing anxiety. That hits hard because I feel like for so many people, the language classroom is a site of trauma. The teacher calls on you, you don't know the answer, everyone stares. It feels like that anxiety itself is a barrier.
It is a literal, biological barrier. Krashen has a term for this too, the affective filter. Think of it like a gate in your brain. If you are bored, angry, or anxious, the gate goes up. Even if you are listening to great French or English content, if that filter is up because you're stressed about your exam or looking stupid, the input cannot reach the part of the brain responsible for language acquisition. So when a teacher forces a student to speak in front of the class before they are ready, they are essentially spiking the student's cortisol levels and slamming that gate shut. It's educational malpractice.
So, if we accept that the speak immediately method is wrong and the grammar drill method is wrong, what does the right path look like? And why is it so hard to find?
The right path is boring to sell because it requires patience. It requires what's called comprehensible input. You need to listen to or read thousands of hours of content that is just slightly above your current level. Not so hard that you're lost, but not so easy that you're bored. The Goldilocks zone.
But Alex, thousands of hours? Who has time for that? We live in a world of fluent in 3 months promises.
And those promises are lies. Let's look at the math. The Foreign Service Institute, which trains U.S. diplomats, estimates it takes about 600 to 750 classroom hours to reach professional proficiency in languages like French or Spanish. For harder languages like Arabic or Japanese, it's over 2,200 hours. Now, a typical high school student gets maybe 3 or 4 hours of exposure a week for maybe 30 weeks a year. That's roughly 120 hours a year. To hit 700 hours, you'd need 6 years of perfect attendance and perfect focus. And that's assuming the classroom time is high quality, which, as we've established, it usually isn't.
So we are bringing a teaspoon to clear a blizzard. That explains the failure rate. But I want to pivot to the people who do get past the beginner stage, the ones who can order the coffee, maybe have a basic chat about the weather, but they get stuck. They hit this wall where they just don't get any better for years. The intermediate plateau. What is happening there?
The intermediate plateau is fascinating because it's a psychological trap, not a linguistic one. When you are a beginner, everything is new. You learn the word for apple and boom, instant dopamine hit. You see progress every day. But when you reach an intermediate level, say B1 or B2 on the CEFR scale, you can communicate, you can survive, and your brain, being an efficiency machine, says, "Great, job done. I can order the beer, I can find the train station, I don't need to work hard anymore." You stop noticing the gap between what you say and what a native speaker says. You succumb to what researchers call fossilization. Your errors become permanent because they don't stop you from being understood.
That sounds incredibly frustrating. It's like being good enough to play the song, but sounding like a jagged amateur forever. How do you break that fossilization? Is it just more input?
It is more input, but a specific kind. You need compelling input. This is another nuance from Krashen. At the intermediate level, you can't just listen to learning materials. You have to listen to things where you are so interested in the content that you forget you're listening to a foreign language. You need to be listening to a podcast about true crime in Spanish or watching a documentary about history in German. The emotional engagement lowers the affective filter completely. Your brain is so desperate to know who the killer is that it starts grabbing every linguistic clue it can find. It forces you out of the plateau because the gist isn't enough anymore. You need the nuance to understand the story.
I love that distinction. It shifts the focus from studying to consuming. But I have to play devil's advocate here. What about the harsh truth of talent? Because we all know that one person who just picks up languages like they're picking up coins off the street. Is there a genetic component we're ignoring?
There is a component of aptitude, sure. Some people have better phonemic awareness. They can hear and replicate sounds better. Some have better working memory. But, and this is a huge but, research suggests that while aptitude speeds up the rate of learning, it doesn't determine the ultimate success. Anyone with a functioning brain can learn a language. The "I'm just bad at languages" excuse is usually a mask for "I have high anxiety and used bad methods." Think about it, Chloe. There are no babies who fail to learn their native language because they aren't good at languages. Unless there's a specific cognitive impairment, everyone succeeds. The variable isn't talent, it's the environment.
That is incredibly validating, but also puts the responsibility back on us. If we can't blame our genes, we have to blame our methods. I want to circle back to the cultural aspect of this. We're talking about English a lot, and obviously English is the global lingua franca. Does the privilege of being a native English speaker actually make us worse at learning other languages?
Oh, absolutely. It's the monolingual mindset. If you speak English, the world accommodates you. You can travel to Berlin, Bangkok, or Bogota and probably get by. That removes the survival necessity that drives a lot of language acquisition. But there's also a cultural humility issue. In many English-speaking cultures, making mistakes is seen as embarrassing. In other cultures, trying to speak a few words of the local language is seen as a sign of respect, even if you butcher it. We have to get over the ego. You have to be willing to sound like a toddler. You have to be willing to lose your sophistication. That's a harsh truth. To become fluent, you have to be willing to sound stupid for a long time.
That loss of identity is real. I remember trying to speak Italian and feeling like my personality had been amputated. I couldn't make jokes, I couldn't be sarcastic. I was just vanilla.
That is the language ego, and it's why a lot of people quit. They miss their clever, funny, articulate selves. But you have to view it as building a new character. French Chloe might be a bit quieter and more direct than English Chloe, and that's okay. It's part of the psychological expansion of learning a language.
So let's synthesize this for the listener who is feeling a mix of relief and despair right now. They know the school system failed them. They know their anxiety is blocking them. What is the immediate, actionable step? If I want to restart my journey today, what do I do differently?
First, stop trying to speak. Seriously, give yourself a silent period. Permission granted. Take the pressure off. Second, flood your brain with input. But, and this is key, make it input you can understand. Don't turn on CNN in Spanish if you're a beginner. It's just noise. Find comprehensible input channels on YouTube. Listen to graded readers. Watch cartoons if you have to. You are looking for that 80–90% comprehension rate. Third, accept the timeline. It's going to take years, not months. But if you are enjoying the content, if you're watching a series you love, the time doesn't feel like study, it just feels like life.
It seems like the ultimate harsh truth is that there is no shortcut. All the apps promising fluency in 5 minutes a day are just selling us the illusion of progress. Real progress is messy, slow, and mostly silent.
Exactly. Language learning isn't an intellectual test you cram for. It's a biological process you nurture. You are literally growing new gray matter in your brain. You can't force a plant to grow by pulling on it. You just water it and wait. Input is the water.
I love that image. Stop pulling on the plant, Alex. This has been a complete reframe of the struggle. I think a lot of people are going to stop beating themselves up after hearing this.
I hope so. The world is a lot bigger when you can speak to more of it. It's worth the struggle. Just don't struggle the wrong way.
Well said. Thank you, Alex, for peeling back the layers on this. And to everyone listening, put down the grammar book, put on some headphones, and be kind to your brain. It's doing the best it can. We'll see you next time.